Hi everyone, I'm Mike and welcome to my channel CrookedCrowCrafting. This video will be on my scratch build of Games Workshop's beta Decima terrain. I'm not doing a personal intro like I normally do as I'm traveling at the moment. This one had a lot of steps, but it wasn't really that complex. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. Enjoy the video and please like and subscribe. Here is the Games Workshop version, and here is mine. My photography skills are not on par with their professional photographers. These are the measurements I found online for the platforms. I started off with a circular platform for the ferrotonic furnace, but I decided that, given the materials I had available, an octagon would be easier. I liked the octagon better anyway. I made this decision after I already drew the complete top as a circle. First, I drew a circle with a radius of 180 millimeters. I used a compass and a ruler to draw this up, just a little bit of mental gymnastics to try and copy the GW design. I then proceeded to divide a new circle into halves, quarters, and eighths. Here is the circular top to the ferrotonic furnace that I completed. Notice the width of what will become the metal strapping. It is 2.5 millimeter from the center on each side, making 5 millimeter strapping. Now I need to figure out the platform attachments, and I copied the work I did on the circular platform. Here is a completed octagonal platform for the ferrotonic furnace. Now it's time to cut out all the in-between spaces. I use window screen for the grating. I use this a lot in my builds. I like it because it seems more to scale than granny grating, also called mesh plastic canvas. Everything is trimmed and the grating is visible through the spaces. I cut a chipboard bottom for the furnace platform. Now I'll start cutting the wood supports for the strapping. I used 3/16 inch, approximately 5 millimeter basswood so that I can glue 3 millimeter magnets in the wood and the strapping would cover the wood. The completed thickness with the chipboard, screen, basswood, and the cardstock is 6.5 millimeter. Observant viewers will notice that this platform is smaller. It's for a furnace I'm scratch building out of a Pringles can. I 3D printed a furnace for the large platform. When cutting the wood, I just follow the outside of the pattern to get the correct angles. The inside supports don't need to be as precise as they will be covered once glued together. Here is how I cut the wood for the middle of the platform. As I said, it doesn't need to be as precise as the outside edges. A lot of the wood has been placed and I'm almost done with this part of the process. I'm using the cardstock as a guide to ensure the wood stays hidden under the cardstock prior to gluing. That's medium thickness super glue I'm using. This is the size of the styrene I used for the piping. I glued with the same medium thickness super glue. I lined up the piping and marked where the cuts and angles needed to be. Notice the white tips on the tweezers. That stuff is called tool magic. It allows you to coat tools with a rubberized coating. Very helpful when you don't want to mar a surface or need a little extra grip. All the piping is finished. The first look at the 3D printed ferrotonic furnace. Now I'm starting work on the walkways. I've found that using the edge of the cutting mat and lining up the chipboards gives me the best cuts. There are 3 sizes used in the Beta Decima train and I've duplicated the measurements. This chipboard is the bottom piece and the construction of the walkway will be the same as the ferrotonic furnace platform. This is how I made the pattern for the walkways on the cardstock. Since 3 small walkway pieces won't completely cover a large deck piece, I used 2 templates to trace the ends of the large template. Once completed, I made a chipboard template for the walkways and used it to trace the strapping on the cardstock. I've started gluing the wood frames on the cardstock. I'm aligning the wood under the cardstock prior to gluing. Each cardstock piece is labeled for a particular chipboard and wood piece. This ensures that the wood frame will be hidden when everything is completed. When using super glue, I use an accelerator that is in the orange topped bottle. If you ever watch some of my other videos, you will know I take the accelerator out of the spray bottle and put it in a dropper bottle. It saves on accelerator and I can put it precisely where I want it. Finally, I'm placing some 3D printed greebles in place on the walkways. I use the cardstock to verify that the greebles will be centered through the gaps. Now I'm gluing the cardstock to the screen. Well, I didn't mean to cut the baking paper underneath. I'm orienting the screen so that they will all look consistent. Ordinary superglue is fine for this. I wanted to add a little more detail to the strapping on the walkways and furnace top. I made some square chipboard pieces and placed a gem on it. It just looked like my standard rivet piece on a square, so I decided to design and 3D print my own so it would look like a bolt. That's Aleene's tacky glue being used. So now it's time for a lot of taping. I bought a bundle of hobby tape and used the entire 6mm roll. Before priming and painting, I wanted to protect the surfaces that needed to be glued together. I also wanted to paint the screen black. I've learned from camping that you can see better through a black screen than any other color. I covered all the wood supports with tape. Now for the cardstock and screen. Everything is taped and ready for priming and painting. All the platforms are ready, but before priming, they all need supports to elevate them. I pre-cut a bunch of foam on my hot wire table along with all the chipboard and MDF that I will need. The top and bottom of the supports are the same size, but the bottom is 2.5mm MDF for the weight. Notice a few supports are already started in the upper left. I made multiple templates to ensure that my placement on every piece is consistent. Every piece of foam and chipboard is marked for the center line to help with gluing. The foam pieces for the bottom are marked with both center lines length and width. Once everything is marked, I used foam safe superglue to put it all together. I glued the MDF to a piece of foam, then the chipboard centerpiece onto the foam. Next, I glued two 5mm by 5mm pieces to either side of the bottom of the chipboard. I glued the sides on next. All this playing around was just to give the support pieces a little depth. I have a new favorite way to add rivets to my terrain. I use 2mm rhinestones. I also have a new favorite tool. It's from a different hobby and it's called a rhinestone picker tool. I love this thing. It grabs the rhinestones first try and I can place them pretty quickly. Much harder with a pair of tweezers. One side has a rubber piece for picking up and the other side is a hollow tube for pushing the rhinestone into position. To make the uprights and platforms steadier when assembled, I added magnets. Here is how I installed the magnets in the uprights. Again, I made a template to make things easier. I used the templates to mark the top and bottom since the uprights can be combined for different heights. These are the magnets I used. They are 3x1mm and 3x3mm. The 3x3 magnets were used on the base and the 3x1 on the top of the uprights. The chipboard on the top is thinner than the MDF on the bottom. I have two polarity sensitive tools, one red and one blue, to keep the polarity straight. I can't remember where I got them. You have to make sure the polarity is correct for all of the magnets. You can see I'm using regular super glue for the bottom. Now I needed to place magnets on the platforms. The magnets were placed where there were wood supports. I used my small T-square to determine the location. The template was used on all the uprights and were used again for the platforms to ensure all the magnets lined up. Some drilling later, and time to place the 3x1 magnets. There was no exposed foam, so I could just use normal gel super glue. Notice I push the magnets in and then slide the tool away so it leaves the magnet flush with the surface. All the uprights and platforms with magnets and greebles are installed. Now it's time for priming. I'm using Stynylrez black primer and Atom paint thinner and cleaner with retarder. Notice the blue taped areas. This is where I will glue the top of the platforms to the bottom. I wanted to ensure those areas were paint free. I made this little holder to help paint and prime miniatures and terrain pieces, anything with a magnet. All the platform pieces have been primed. Here's a preview of how things will look when assembled. I will be painting all the greebles before final assembly. Since the uprights have foam in their construction, I primed them with black paint and Elmer's glue. Then I placed all the greebles on the uprights. All the uprights were painted with Army Painter Regiment Gray Air Paint. Here are all the paints I used for the greebles. All the greebles have been painted and I'm preparing to paint the strapping. First, I need to tape all the black graded areas. Yes, that's a chopstick. I ran out of the right size tape, so I needed to double up in order to cover the grates completely. Here are the colors and sequence in which I painted the upper deck. First, I airbrushed with Citadel Corn Red. Next, I sponged on Army Painter Wyvern Fury. then Reaper Bone Red. I did all the sponge painting because I wanted the platforms to look weathered and a little textured. After all, being in a harsh environment means a lot of repainting over time. And finally, I did a light dry brush of Citadel Squig Orange to highlight the edges. Now I need to paint the bolts. I made a template and painted with Vallejo Metal Color Dura Aluminum. Here are some pictures of the finished project. I didn't detail the painting of the ferrotonic furnace as it was an experiment that turned out all right. I also magnetized the walkway barricades for the ferrotonic furnace. I hope you learned something from my building process, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Please like and subscribe.